one ever talks about the miracle of Jesus having 12 close friends. I was like, oh, I feel that.
How's it going, Jeremiah?
Yo, Matt.
Hey,
good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me here.
Yeah.
So what do you think for the haircut?
Yeah, so begin tight on the bottom, fading up into a little bit longer, and then pretty much just cleaning up the top. It's definitely getting a little bit long.
Yeah.
Coming into fall, so I don't want anything, short, but just kind of cleaning up the top a little bit.
Yeah. And you like
Nice.
kind of you don't want a look that's too super cleaned up, right?
Yep,
Like
I like
usually.
it messy. I like it textured and thick. Not like a hard line on the side or anything. So.
Yeah, you usually just kind of push it over. So add some texture, take out some width or some length, a little bit of weight in there to let it just do its own thing. We usually taper it up pretty tight in the back, right? We usually end up having it pretty tight, and then we'll just keep it nice and long for the fall.
Yes.
Sweet. So Jeremiah, I've known you since you were 14 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Which is crazy because I was a child and you were a younger child. And it's so cool to see how you've developed into a man. A few steps ahead of me in different places. You're a married man.
Yeah.
You got a kid.
Yeah, 5 months old.
How old's your child?
5 months.
Oh yeah, you said that.
You're good.
And what's your child's name? Tell us a little bit about your kid.
Yeah, so Myra is 5 months. She is beautiful and amazing. She just recently found her giggle.
That's super fun.
Which is just so adorable, and we love her so much.
Who made her laugh first?
That was her grandmother.
Okay.
On mom's side. So Jess is my wife. So her mom, Jess's mom, had this little toy and was just kind of tickling her, and she started laughing. And Jess was thankfully videotaping because I was not there. So then when I got home that day from work, she's like, I have something to show you. I have a surprise. And I was like, what? Yeah. Anyways, we were both crying.
No, that's super fun. I was talking to my other friend who just had a baby, and she had her first cry. And I was like, wouldn't it be really a bummer if someone you really didn't like was the first person to make them laugh? But
that would be rough.
Yeah, it's good that it was her grandma, right?
Yeah, thankful.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. And and you've been married for a couple years now? Or about
so this past July was 2 years. So a little over 2 years. Definitely learning stuff all the time. It's been a really interesting season of constant change and constant growth, and it's making me realize that I'm never going to be settled into a spot that's super comfy and there's no changes up ahead. Change is going to be a consistent theme throughout my life. So I got engaged, got married, moved into an apartment, and started doing the whole adult life thing, figuring out budget and bills and all that good stuff. And was finishing up school. So I went to school for music production. So I was still finishing up final classes. That was all online. So thankfully there was a lot of flexibility there. But finished up school, and for my graduation, so I went to Full Sail University, which is based in Florida. So Jess and I went down for my graduation / also a 1 year anniversary trip.
Oh, wow.
Because that's also where we spent our honeymoon down in Florida. So kind of hit both things, super fun. And then just a few months later, found out we were expecting. And,
a little celebrating down there?
Yeah, just a little bit, Yeah, and it wasn't quite according to our plan or expectations, but it was definitely exciting. That was definitely a lot of emotions to work through, but went from single living at my parents' in school to married, newly graduated, and expecting. So just like all the new stuff that comes with marriage, all the new stuff that comes with being out of school and now entering the workforce full time and all of that. And then just, you know, the practicals of living with a new person and then preparing for another new person to be coming.
For sure.
And so, yeah, that was definitely a lot of change in 2 years. But it's amazing. My wife is fantastic. We're lucky enough to be able to have her as a stay-at-home mom in this season, and she crushes that and just does such a great job loving Myra so well and caring for her. And yeah, it's a lot of new stuff.
That's awesome. Do you say you have a lot of like support or a good support system around you to help like with that, with your marriage, with your kids, with your kid? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So her parents are like 25 minutes away. My parents are 7 minutes away.
Yeah.
So we have lots of built-in babysitters, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And people that we trust. So it's the 4th grandbaby on my side of the family and the 1st on Jess's side.
Wow.
And so it's been really cool to see her family light up and get just this whole new side of them coming out is amazing. And my family is so excited for us and so supportive. And yeah, it's been good.
No, that is super fun. And we were talking a little bit before we started talking on the camera about how you've got, so we were talking a little bit off camera before we started about your kind of journey with finding community. Obviously, you just said that you have a good like family behind you, but I think something that our society doesn't do super well in the United States, and especially in this part of the United States, being in rural Pennsylvania, is I guess I'll retract that. Something that I think sometimes rural Pennsylvania has as a plus is they do have good like friends and family, but they don't always. Their strength is not always reaching out past that to a broader community.
Yeah.
But I would say at least in the more modern culture, it's harder to have close community. Where would you say that you've been like seeking that out, and what have you been kind of learning in your pursuit of trying to find community?
Yeah. I think one of the first things that pops into my head for what I've learned in the pursuit of community is that, our culture gives a lot of fake community. There's just a lot of fake community available. And I mean,
what do you mean by fake community?
Yeah. So the facade of connecting with people, whether it's social media and connecting with people's personas and the idea of people versus who they truly are, and connecting with the best parts of their lives. I mean, that's something that gets talked about, I think, a fair amount, but also something that I was actually thinking about on the way here and that I've thought about kind of in this past season is, at least for me, as somebody who loves art and entertainment and music and film and TV shows and stuff, having this like fake sense of community in whatever story I'm listening to or engaging with at the time. So whether that's a movie or a series of movies or a TV show, or I like to listen to audiobooks. So maybe that's an audiobook, and finding a sense of like camaraderie with these people that I can't engage with. I can't actually talk to. I can't call up. I can't, sit down and have a meal or have a good cry or something with these people. And so there's this fake sense of like, oh, well, I know so many people, but how many people actually know me? And how many people actually would be willing to, at a phone call, come over and allow me to just chat or allow me to just cry or whatever that looks like. Yeah. So just this fake sense of like, oh, well, I'm super connected with more people than like I've come in contact with via social media, more people than, most people 100, 200, 300 years ago would have come in contact with in their whole life.
Yeah.
And so realizing that just contacting a one-time connection doesn't equal actual relationship.
Yeah.
And I definitely just have not arrived. And I don't even know, I don't feel like our culture does a great job of giving a good end goal of what true strong connection and friendship looks like. I had a taste of it at my cousin's bachelor party.
Okay.
We went out. It was not a stereotypical bachelor party. We went out into the woods in Pittsburgh area. And we brought 5-gallon buckets filled with supplies, and we built a campfire. And my cousin had sent out an email with a couple questions to all of his groomsmen like a month before this happened.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I want you guys to be thinking about these questions before you come so that we can have some really deep and good conversation on these things.
Yeah.
And so I knew him, I knew his brother, and my brother was also in the wedding party. And then there were 4 or 5 other guys that it was the first time I was meeting them. So I wasn't sure what to expect conversation wise, the quality of it. But my cousin Daniel had cultivated such an intentional group of guys. And that's something that I also had growing up with him.
Yeah.
And so we all came together, and that was half of the guys I didn't know, or more than half of the guys I didn't know. But yet it was one of the strongest times of connection and feeling like this is what community should look like. Being around a fire, talking about these deep things, opening up, being real. And there was a sense of a willingness for vulnerability.
Yeah.
Which I feel like in that number, that quantity of a group of guys is rare for dudes to open up as much as we did that night.
Yeah.
But, midnight rolls around, you're around a campfire. There's just something so perfect about that.
Yeah.
And it was also cool because I had the day before pretty much lost my voice. No idea why.
Oh, man.
I wasn't showing tons of signs of being sick or anything. It was really weird, but it afforded me the opportunity of just kind of quietly listening as these dudes were opening up and sharing stories from their past and being real and being open. And I think, honestly, that time around that campfire really, it was like a desired vision that I couldn't even have told you what it would have looked like, but it was something that I desired coming to life before my eyes. And it was like, wait, the amount of relationship, the amount of community that I'm desiring can actually happen. This is possible. I wouldn't have even had known how to describe it, but it's here in front of me and it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And yeah, I love talking, but not having a voice or barely having a voice. Everybody else had to shut up, and I had to try to whisper as loud as I possibly could just for them to hear me. So that honestly was, I don't know, that was just so cool, getting to sit and listen and forcing me to be quiet and just engage and not feel the need to be heard, but to just actually genuinely listen. And yeah, going away from that, I've talked to my cousin, my brother, and my other cousin, but the other 4 or 5 guys I haven't talked to since.
Yeah.
But it's still stoked that desire for community.
Yeah.
So one of the places then that my wife and I have pursued continued relationship is through our church. And we were like, hey, let's get a group of people who are in a similar season to us together. So we just started a group for young marrieds, young married couples. And that's been really cool. That was I forget how long that ran, but we did that for 3 or 4 months. And normally those types of groups kind of just, stop and then dwindle off. But we've had 3 or 4 gatherings since then. There's another one coming up at the end of the month. Not, officially a group with the church or anything. It's just this same group of people choosing to get together. And I feel like again and again, I hear the heart and the desire for community. And it's just people kind of being at a loss for like, okay, what does that actually look like? And how do we actually tap into that? And how do we open ourselves up for that? And I mean, it takes commitment and time and effort. I think like it is sad to me that isolation and work and money have become these like, you are successful if you're productive, you're successful if you're working more than other people, you're successful, like it's all isolated within yourself, rather than looking at what does it look like to successfully live within community. And I wish that was a higher priority. Did I answer your question?
No, you're doing good, man.
I probably more than answered your question.
Yeah, you did. So I want to kind of focus a little bit in on some places, because if you're like myself, like the places that you find the most like desire is a place that you found the most lack at some point in your life. What were some places that you would say that you didn't have community, that it really affected your heart and kind of your the way you were living? And which kind of ways did it affect, like physically, emotionally? Like what kind of was the biggest draw from you?
Yeah, that's really good. I would say, so at a younger age, for me, I grew up as the youngest of 3. And then I was homeschooled all the way through. And so there were 2 families that my family was really close with, that we did a lot together. So my cousins that I already mentioned, they were virtually siblings. And there was 1 below me and then 3 above me there. And then there was another family. It was an amazing family, and had a couple kids that were older than me and then a couple kids that were younger. But for the most part, I was hanging out with a lot of people who were older than me. And so I think I naturally just started to like get used to the type of conversation that, kids 5 years older than me were having. And my parents did a lot with young adult ministry. And so I was hanging around a lot of young adults, even as a kid and stuff. And so I started going to different co-ops, which is homeschool speak for one day of school. You gather with other homeschoolers and you do school for one day. And dude, all the guys, this would have been like, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there. All the dudes were just so immature, and it was so painful because I was used to hanging out with older kids. So it was so painful. And
because when I met you at 14, you were 14. I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Or maybe like 19, 20, something like that.
Yep. And that was the crowd that I was generally hanging out with, even at 14 and stuff.
And everyone knew you were young because you were little. But you also, like, people were just like, oh, Jeremiah's here. That's cool. So, like, it's not that, from your perspective, like, you felt that way, but it also came across that way, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that led me to, when I was younger, the girls were more mature. And so I would hang out with girls at co-op. And then when I wasn't there, I was like, well, I can't just go hanging out with a whole bunch of chicks all the time, inviting them over to my house and stuff. That just felt weird and wrong. And when I was younger, dating was just like stupid. And it was like, well, what's even the point of that? Like, I'm not getting married, so that's just dumb. Anyways, and so I ended up just not really hanging out with a lot of people my age. And I think I missed out on, just in that younger season, then also into teenage years, I missed out on having those dumb dude moments with guys my age, doing stupid stuff and just having that camaraderie of guys at a young age. And I think that would have been helpful in developing as a dude and realizing like, okay, what does this look like? What does this mean? And how do I grow in a healthy way? And like at times I had that, but I think that was one of the areas that relationship was lacking, was with guys my own age. And so I think that's kind of a long answer for how it was lacking. But then the ways that affected me, I think now, so hanging out with older groups helped me to mature, helped me all those things. But there were definitely times of like, you know, do people actually want me here? Or is this one of those moments where, you know, I'm at a young adult thing that my parents are hosting, and then my parents are like, hey, we need to have some deeper conversation. It'd probably be time for you to head upstairs or something. And then, so I'm sitting there in conversation today with peers, and I'm there like, okay, is this time for the adult conversation where they would like Jeremiah to leave now so that they can actually talk about real stuff?
Yeah. So you didn't feel like you really had a home in either spheres, because you're like, these guys are too young and too immature.
Yeah.
But then also you weren't invited into the places that you wanted to be.
Yeah. And I would say that was rightfully so for the older group. There were conversations that needed to happen that I couldn't be there for.
Exactly.
But
in your state of mind, you didn't realize what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think even today, there are times when I'm dealing with insecurities and going, man, I wish I had been able to figure this out in a safe environment of immaturity, even if it was annoying at the time, to be like, nope, I am a valuable part of this conversation. People are wanting to chat with me and engage in conversation with me. I wish I had been able to, have that at a younger age, versus now there are times when, I'm like, am I wanted in this conversation? Or am I just kind of that talkative, annoying one that people are like, man, I would rather you, like the meetings that I can't go to are people like, oh, good, you know, he can't be there. And I think,
I'm sure you know that's not true in your head. But.
Yes. Yeah. In my head, I know it's not true. I mean, I'm sure there are times when people are like, okay, dude, you need to wrap up your sentence. I'm sure that's real. But, I think that sense of like brotherhood, I had that with my brother and with my two cousins that I already mentioned. There was definitely camaraderie with the four of us, and that was really close. But the two cousins moved away, and my brother got married, and then our relationship definitely changed. And I was left in this place of like, I don't know how to go out and make relationship with somebody who's not related to me. These people were forced to be with me and forced into conversation and forced into a relationship and that type of thing. And so...
And you're also a part of the same family culture, because like each family has their own culture that everyone can just kind of step back into or sit back into.
Yep.
Well, when it's someone that has a totally different family culture, and I know like I was homeschooled when I was younger too.
Yeah.
Like when you get into the culture of an area that you haven't experienced, you also have like, you missed out on cultural things that you're like, okay, now I have to figure out how this culture acts and then how this person acts, which is not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. And learning like, what are things that are okay to say? What are questions that are okay to ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole world. And I did have those people that, you know, helped me to learn those things, but I still feel like I'm at a place of, what does it practically look like with the busyness of my life to actually have a best friend that's not my wife, a male best friend that I can do life with? There's the practical side of that, and then also the emotional side. So the practical side of like, well, that to have a close friend, you need to invest time.
Yeah.
But there's only so much time that I have being a husband and dad and wanting to connect with Jess's family and my family.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just that journey of like practically, and then also, okay, emotionally, what does it look like to actually connect on a deep level? Because culture doesn't give us a good picture of that. Yeah, again, going back to culture is very fine with isolation and being in your own little world, in your own little bubble. And so, yeah, how do you safely and intentionally open yourself up to deep relationship? And it's also nerve-wracking when you have no idea if the other person is going to reciprocate.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, this is what I would like the relationship to look like. I would like it to look like 9 guys out in the woods around a campfire having heartfelt discussions. But the other person's like, yeah, I'm fine to, you know, give you the bro nod at church. Like, two very different things. And so figuring out how to communicate that and wishing it was there.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I think that's one of my strengths is community and building friendships.
I would agree.
And investing in people. I think I have plenty of weaknesses, but I think what I would speak into that is that a lot of times it takes just intentionality, and it takes a willingness to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
And a willingness to be seen for who you are. I would say there's a lot of people that are afraid to be seen. And whether that's because some people in like it's because of how whether it's a religious culture or just some certain hobby, you know, people expect something of you, and want you to look a certain way and act a certain way, and, you know, dress a certain way, all those different things. And so it's like, to be myself, who's a whole person, is a lot harder than to express myself as the person that person wants to see.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking with a friend about this a few weeks ago, and just how we sometimes imagine that we have to show our whole self to every single person. But the honest thing is that no one can handle everything. Like, and even in a certain, like, you can have your best friend that can handle a lot of you. You can have a handful of friends that can handle a lot of you. But not everyone needs to or has the capacity to hold everything that you have. But so sometimes you might feel unauthentic. That people, the person doesn't really know me. But it's okay. Because if you see them for X amount of hours, there's only so much of you that you can share in that amount of time. But finding the people and just being honest with people and in the ways that are, smart to. Not just throwing everything at everybody, but
pearls before swine.
Just throwing things that everything's. Sorry, I'm just saying everything a lot.
It's okay.
So you can kind of throw everything at somebody and it just gets overwhelming. Or you can share moments or aspects of life with somebody. Someone can know you as a funny person, and another person can know you as a super deep person. And that's okay. But I think what's also important is finding those people that you can show both sides of yourself, or all 10 sides of yourself. Because Jeremiah, you are, in different seasons and times of your life, you can say Jeremiah the painter. You can say Jeremiah the music producer. Jeremiah the writer. Jeremiah the I think did you do spoken word at some point? You wrote some different things out before poetry or things like that. You've done videography, and you're doing videography. You're a dad, you're a husband, You know, there's so many aspects to you,
Yeah.
and that's only scratching the surface. And I know you to be someone who really cares deeply for people and really cares deeply for people to know that they're loved,
Yeah.
and specifically loved by Jesus, but just loved.
Yeah.
And so knowing you in that, I'm a deep feeler as well. That when you're talking to people who aren't, it sometimes is painful.
Yeah.
But kind of come back around, I think it's always worth it.
Yeah.
And being present with the people around you,
Yeah.
You'll find the people that will be your people.
Yeah.
You'll say the things, and you can watch people's reactions. And I heard a quote sometime, and I'm probably going to butcher it, and I don't know who had said it. The quote goes something like, let people tell you who they are and believe them.
Huh.
So when people are acting a certain way, and when you share something and they go, oh,
Yeah.
then you know that they're not a person that you want to dig deeply into sharing those deep things of life.
Dang.
But when you share something that's a little, you can kind of throw little things out. You might not tell them your deepest secret, but you tell them, hey, I've been struggling with this thing.
Yeah.
And the way that they react to that, right there what they're thinking. You say, hey, I love producing music. You just talk about the things that you love.
Yeah.
And also another huge thing is learn people by asking questions of them, because a lot of people, they need someone to listen. The other day I just had a friend that was kind of going through something really heavy, and she's like, thanks just for answering the phone. Like, no one answered the phone.
Wow.
So it's like, but the reason they called me was because I said, hey, if you need a place, if you need something like just a place to talk, a place to kind of debrief, like, just let me know. Like, I know you're going through some stuff. Like, just let me know. Cut that cop dropping the comb. That's just for the patrons. But I said, just let me know if you need anything. And then you have to say that, but then you also have to be available.
Yeah, follow through needs to be.
And there's boundaries you have to set, and you can go through a lot of stuff with that.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is being vulnerable, being open with who you are in the right ways, and let people tell you who they are.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I saw something on Reels on Instagram the other day, and it was maybe you saw this, but it was this dude, and he's like, no one ever talks about the miracle of Jesus being in his 30s and having 12 close friends. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it is funny.
I mean, I'm not in my 30s, but I was just like, I feel that. For sure.
Yeah.
So ask you a question.
Yeah.
What would do you have words that could describe what your ideal image of living in community, what that would look like?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to figure that out as well. Right now, the thing that I have a problem with is I make a lot of friends in a lot of places.
Yeah. I mean,
and they're very spread out.
Yeah.
So I'm not really living my ideal vision of community either.
Sure.
Because I think something that's really important is having people around you that are just that are around you.
Yeah.
That know you.
Geographically close.
Yeah. But I do have a good solid group of friends that I've invested in. Some people I've known for some people in that group I've known for 2 years. Some people I've known, my friend Andrew is my longest friend. I've known him for as long as I really remember. Probably young junior high age. Like,
yeah,
we've been varying levels of friends. And we've become really close friends that he's just always there for me, and I'm always there for him. And finding those people is a really rare thing. But I think that everyone has the ability to find one. But that's the other thing, is you have to be one to find one. And if you're not able to be loyal, if you're not willing to say, hey, whatever you need, like, let me know. And then actually like deliver on that. And then sometimes not saying whatever you need, let me know, but saying, hey, you need this. Let me help you with this.
Wow, that's good.
That's another thing, because like sometimes your friend doesn't know what they need. But if you are watching them and speaking with them, and you care about them, you have the ability to see what they can't see. And especially, I believe, as a Christian, like we have, the Bible talks about us having the Spirit of God living inside of us, which is crazy. And the fact that we can pray for someone and be like, hey, God, I don't know what they need, but I can tell they're hurting. And just like the fact that the Holy Spirit, like I've experienced it so many times, where he'll just like give me wisdom on like, hey, just encourage someone in this way, you know? And even I was talking to a pastor one time, and
just that once.
One time. It was the only time I talked to a pastor. No, but it was I was talking to a pastor and just encouraging him. Just he gave a really concise, really beautiful message, but that was really just a lot of good truth. And I was just saying, hey, thank you for investing the way you do, and thank you for, you guys a lot of times thank us for serving, and I just want to thank you for like dedicating your life to the service of the church and the people around. And just give him some more specific encouragement into what he was doing, and I'll keep that kind of anonymous. But just kind of encourage him in some really specific ways that I felt like God was wanting him to be encouraged in. And he said, hey, a lot of times I get either, he said, I don't get encouragement or negative comments. Like, I just don't get feedback. And he's like, so sometimes I wonder, like, what am I doing here? Like, am I making a difference? Is there an impact here? Are people noticing? Is this important? And as a pastor, you think, oh, that pastor's fine. Like, they're studying the Bible. They're like, this is their life work. They
feel filled with purpose every moment of the day. They don't have struggles.
I heard a pastor say one time, he's like, you know what? I don't really love my job all the time. Like, most times.
I'm not allowed.
He's like my like speaking and sharing these ways. He said, but I feel like it's so important that I'm in it. So it's hard for me sometimes to stick in it without having people kind of just like having his back. And so something I always say too is encourage the people that you don't think need encouragement, because they probably need it the most.
That's good.
And that's where I would say is you find a lot of where I found my closest friendships is when I encourage people in very specific ways and intentional ways. Because it allows them to know they're seen and to know they're heard. And because they're known and heard, then they're willing to be vulnerable with you, and that's them telling you who they are. That's them telling you that they trust you and that they're willing to share. And that most times when someone shares something deep of their own life, they're not going to share. They're not going to go spew your beans. So it's all friendship's always a slow process, and it's there's never a fast track to friendship. But if there was, I would say it's through encouraging people and seeing them and believing what they're telling you with their body and with their mind and with their emotions when they're in need. But,
it's really good.
Talk a little bit about, you said there was a time where in your early teens, and for a bunch of years we kind of disconnected. We live probably,
Yeah.
not that far away, but far enough away, different communities.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about. So you just didn't connect that much. But there was a time you said in your kind of late high school years or maybe post high school years that you had a concussion and it was a really hard time for you.
Yeah.
So tell me more about what that means.
Yeah. So when I was 14 on Mother's Day, had a really bad concussion. Of course, it was Mother's Day. And then multiple that followed that. And so, I mean, it was necessary for me to spend a lot of time alone in order for my brain to just heal and recover. So I did end up spending quite a bit of time by myself, just in a dark place, like literally physically dark, lights out, because lights were bothering me.
Man.
And would definitely mess with my head. And in that season, that was like probably a 4 or 5 year journey, honestly, between kind of I had a big concussion and then I had some smaller ones that kind of kept the process going for longer. So during that season and during the season of actually engagement to Jess, and as we were planning our wedding, I would say that those 2 seasons were the seasons where I felt the most isolated, even though somewhat sadly, I had lots of people around me. I just didn't know what it looked like to reach out and to actually stay connected and in community. And so I'd say though, like, yeah, I can very pointedly trace back that the 2 seasons where I felt most isolated were the 2 hardest seasons of my life. And it feels very, very connected. I mean, during the concussion season, my personality was changing because I was alone for so long. I used to be this total extrovert, wanting to always be with people, and it changed to being more introverted. And it took a lot of intentionality from me and from others that I loved to be like, no, I need to be with people. I need to get out of this trapped box of it being by myself. I remember my brother saying to me, he's like, dude, I don't always understand when you're processing, either because I haven't gone through it or maybe you're not using the most clear words ever. He's like, but I love you enough that if you say, hey, this really matters to me, I really need you to listen. Whether I understand or not, I'm going to care and I'm going to listen. And that wrecked me.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so just this invitation to say, yeah, hey, even if you don't understand me, I just need you to listen. Yeah. And I need you to care in this moment. And he's willing to be that. So things like that, pulling me out of isolation and being like, nope, I need people. People are good. Not all people, but being with people and in community is good. Yeah. And yeah, learning. I went to counseling for like a year, and my counselor said that you need to, with people who are close, you need to be able to, in one conversation, have both people pour out and both people support the other person. It can't be taking turns of one-sidedness of like, oh, this is Jeremiah's day where Jeremiah has a rough day with his wife. And then this is Jess's day where Jess has a rough day. Like that's going to happen. But the majority of the time it needs to be you're coming home and you're both talking about the rough parts. And just because Jess had something rough going on doesn't mean that I don't talk about what was painful during that day. Yeah. Because I definitely did that with my parents during the concussion season. We all went through quite a lot, and we would just kind of like take turns being the one who needed to emotionally be not okay rather than all doing that at the same time. And that just wasn't helpful. So
yeah. And it's not that it becomes a competition, but it becomes a place where you're safe to still be going through something while someone else is. You don't have to be the hero in that moment.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think being the hero or attempting to be the hero just so often squishes under the surface the stuff that needs to come out. And it's going to come out at one point or another. Emotions are meant to be had, and they're going to be had. Yeah. Whether it's in a way that's helpful and life-giving and building up, or if it just kind of squirts out the seams in unhealthy ways.
Yeah. So we're kind of wrapping up this haircut, but I would love to hear just a piece of advice that you'd give your, I would say, 14-year-old self, because that's when you're kind of going through some stuff. But what would you give advice to your 14-year-old self?
If I want to have like a nice quotable one sentence, because it was necessary in that season, I would say invite people into the silence, even when you're there by yourself. Maybe you can't talk. Maybe you don't have anything to say, but I still needed somebody to be there. And thankfully I had that oftentimes, but a lot of times I didn't. And I needed it more than I probably had. So invite people into the silence, into those moments where, yeah, you're just too overwhelmed to say anything. You still need people to be there and to love you and to support you in that. So don't be afraid to don't be afraid to need people.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thanks, Jeremiah.
Yeah, man.
Let's check out this haircut. How's that looking for you?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
is that a good length in the...
That feels so much cleaner. Yeah? Jess has been starting to complain. So, yeah.
Good timing. Like a good length on the top?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I feel like that's good partners. I don't like around the ears. Oh, it's just always nice to have the ears trimmed up.
Yeah.
Sweet. That looks perfect.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'll just clean up your beard and we'll finish it off.
Let's do it.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Thank you.